Hi, I'm Derek Mooney and this is Read Right Now. Welcome to the programme. This week I've come to the National Stud in County Kildare, where there's a huge amount for everyone to see and do. It's not just the stallions, the mares and the foals. The stud stands on 900 acres. There's so much to explore. Like here at the Japanese Gardens, where there's bridges to cross, tunnels to discover, and paths to explore. Now, sometimes learning can be a steep hike, just like these steps here. But if you persevere and adapt your learning practices, you'll be amazed at just how much you can fit in. Like this week's learner, Eileen Daly, who uses one-to-one tuition to fit learning in around her busy schedule.
One-to-one works for me very well because I mightn't make it every week, and some weeks I would miss. And if I was in a group, the group would be gone on, and it wouldn't be fair on the group either.
We'll be coming back to Eileen later in the show, but now let's check in with Ian and find out what he's talking about. What is he talking about this week?
Thanks, Derek. This week we're at the Natural History Museum in Dublin's Merrion Square, and we'll be talking about memory.
We'll also have our usual learning tips on reading instructions and advice on how to use adverbs, comparatives and superlatives. So, if you want some practical help to get you started, why not call our free phone number? It's 1-800 20 20 65, and when you do that, we'll send you a copy of the new Read Right Now workbook. In the meantime, let's catch up with this week's learner, Eileen Daly. Eileen Daly was born and raised near Tullamore in County Offaly. From a young age she looked after her sick mother, and so school took second place to her life in the home. She now looks after her two sons, one of whom has a physical disability, and combines a busy schedule with her love of gardening and antiques.
I love old furniture and old delf and things like that, so I like buying bits and pieces for the home, and I've always been interested in antiques. I was at home a good bit. I didn't go to school that much. I was at home minding my mother. I suppose I was about probably 11, maybe 12 when I finished. I didn't mind leaving school because, I mean, when you missed so many days anyway, you weren't really learning anything and you were back at the back when everyone else was going on ahead. So looking after my mother was very important, and I didn't mind doing it, nor I didn't mind staying at home to do it. And I mean, I said I would do it again if I had to. I had no problems with that. My reading and writing would have been very bad. I wouldn't have had much reading and writing at that stage. I would have had a little bit of reading but very little writing, and my spelling would have been very, very bad. I spent all my life hiding it from people. So, I mean, you would spend a lot of your time passing over it or making some excuse or something like that. Margaret, I like the look of that plate there, so do I think yeah, it would have had an awful effect on me as a person, because it would have kept you from doing things and from becoming involved in different things, and probably being afraid to get involved in things. Keep your head low and stay out of it. I've been thinking about going, you know, to get some sort of help or go to adult education for a while. And I was in town one day and I got a handout. I looked at the number and I kept it for a few weeks, and I decided one day, I plucked up the courage and decided I would ring the centre, and I went in and I met my tutor then, which was Margaret, and we've been going ever since for the last couple of years.
talking or writing about people, places or objects, we often compare them to describe them more clearly. For example, we might say that this bike is bigger than that bike, or that this bus is higher than that van. These words are called comparatives because you're comparing two things. As we've seen, Eileen loves to collect antiques. Take a look at some examples. This jug is bigger than that jug. This box is longer than that box. This candlestick is smaller than that candlestick. When you're using comparatives, you normally add ER to the end of the words, so that all these words, bigger, longer and smaller, are comparatives. Also, when you're using comparatives, you use the word than when you're comparing two things. However, sometimes you might want to compare more than two things, and if you wanted to do that, you'd use a superlative. Superlatives are used to compare more than two things. Adding EST to the end of the words makes a superlative. This plate is small, this plate is smaller, but this plate is the smallest. So small becomes smallest, big becomes biggest, and long becomes longest. Some words won't take ER or EST, however. With words like modern or beautiful, we add more or most in front of the root word. Let's look at these examples. Modern becomes more modern or most modern. Beautiful becomes more beautiful or most beautiful. And interesting becomes more interesting or most interesting.
It might sound a little complicated, but using comparatives and superlatives is a really good way of contrasting things. For example, on this lake here, there's lots of ducks and swans, and we could use size and colour to compare them all. Now, Ian has also gone animal mad this week. The only difference is that he's found something that's a little bit bigger than a duck.
They say an elephant never forgets. Now, this is good news for elephants, because without being able to remember things, they and we would find it very hard to get through life. Now, Eileen, this week's learner, has a great memory. And like Eileen, whether you're spelling new words, remembering people's names, or doing jobs around the house, your memory is vital. There are two things to consider when we talk about memory. The first is what it is we want to remember, and the second is how to remember it. In this museum, there are over 10,000 exhibits on display. As you wander around, there's a huge number of animals to see of every possible size and shape. You'll probably be able to find some animals' names in your memory and not others. Let's have a look around. See how many of these animals' names you know. Did you get all the names? The badger, the monkey, the lion, the zebra, and the bear? Don't worry if you didn't. Maybe you never knew the name anyway. But were there any of the animals' names you couldn't think of that when I said them you thought, oh yeah, I knew them? This is because we remember things in different ways. Some things we learn as facts in school, some are grounded in personal experience. Some we put into our short-term memory, and some we keep in our long-term memory. Later in the programme, we'll be looking at why we remember some things and not others.